picture for the rabbi.
Yes, sometimes other people. Last week, a little kid sat on it. It's good. So take your time. And now you're on camera, but you can sit down.
Okay, this will just be a mic check. Good, beautiful. It really has a resonance here. My goodness. I don't.
Do you have any of those copies you'd like me to hand out?
Well, I'll tell you what. Yes, I have 10.
Keep a couple. Pick one for Andy, because Andy will be up here with you.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Good. And then we can. But people have the time, but they can use it for that too.
Right,
so that's on page. Oh, please take as many as you'd like. Basically, this is in lieu of people having to have the whole Chumash handed out.
Okay. We'll hand these out and we'll mix them up.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's perfect. You can even give this one here. I'll just use this. And then.
What's the time now, Andy?
It's 17 past.
Okay, so you have 10 minutes to
10
just
minutes,
sit
that'll be
down
fine.
and chill and relax
Sure.
until you put on
Yes,
your sleep.
exactly. I just want to figure out where the.
You know where the bathroom is. You know where the rabbi's office is.
Oh, okay. Yes, so that would be the nearest one.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be the one for you.
Okay, fine.
There is that family one, but that's.
Thank you so
That's
much.
better.
Yes,
They have your
appreciate that.
You good?
I think I'll be fine. How does this thing work?
I don't know what this is. If you want
Stand
to
up.
look there.
Very nice. No, I don't want to knock down the water.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. Let's move that. Let's see what happens. Let's see if that will hold. How does it support it in back? Okay. Okay. think I'm just perfectly set. Thank you so much. Both of you guys are so special. I understand. You do so much. Help us. You're so special.
That's a trick though, because he has a twin brother. An identical twin brother. Yeah, but it messes everybody up, Helen. Larry's a fisherman. He doesn't need to know all this today.
Okay, good. So should we wait another 30 seconds, or should we go ahead and... Okay, good. Shalom uvracha. Shalom and welcome. It seems like such a magnificent sound system. I hope I'm not too loud for you. Is it okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay. If it's, I won't be offended if it's too. If at some point, it's, too much, you can sort of go like this, and I'll I'll know to sort of step back a little here. Then, well, this is such an honor and a joy to be here with your congregation here and Temple Torat Yisrael. This is the first time of my life that I've ever been in Rhode Island, believe it or not, even though there was a time that I was in neighboring Connecticut. But at that time, the world stopped there, and I just never made it over here, to my dismay. Now, it's so beautiful. I want to thank everyone who has really made this possible for me. First of all, those who are watching on live stream, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Rabbi David Barnett, and it's really through the efforts of Susan Smaller and Andrew here, the congregation president, Andrew Scholes, who picked me up at the airport. We had a wonderful afternoon so far. And so without further ado, I know there are people online, hopefully, that will be seeing this. And since it's live streamed, if they don't see it at the minute, it will be recorded perhaps for posterity as well. That having been said, we will begin in our Sidurim first with the Mincha service. And then following that, I've been asked to share a bit of a teaching with you. So we'll go ahead and do that. It's always good to have a measure of Torah. The rabbis tell us if there are 3 people gathered, and if you have any food and you don't discuss Torah, it's like a major sin, like you've committed acts of idolatry. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. So, on page 289, I will begin with the traditional format of the Ashrei here. Ashrei Yeshvei Betecha Od Yulu Chasala Shem Shekachalo Shem Sharanai Lohav Tila David Arimcha Elohai Melech V'Arvacha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed V'chol Yom Avrachecha V'Alala Shimcha Leolam Va'ed Ador Chavod Udecha V'Livrei Nifletecha Sicha Chanum Arachum Aranai Rachapayim Udal Chased At the bottom of 289, Tilat Adonai Zaber Pi Bivrech Chol Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed V'anachnu Nevrech Yah Me'ata Ve'ad Olam Hallelujah. Page 290, we'll continue with the reader's Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Ve'alma Divra Chirutei Ve'amlich Malchutei וחייכון ויומכון וחיידו כל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפואר וזמן ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ותעלה שמי דקודשה בריחו. לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושיחתה תושבחתה ונחמתה. דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. And we'll continue on page 291. As we'll invite you, please, to rise for the beginning of the Amidah. We will do what is referred to as the Heiche Kedusha form, going through first the Avot, then the Gevurot, and then through the Kedusha. And just because, to give, even though I want to emphasize I would not normally do this on a weekday service, but just to give us a feeling of perhaps opening up my voice just a little bit here. On Lador Vador, we'll do a congregational melody on that was composed by cantor Mayor Finkelstein of Los Angeles, formerly of Los Angeles at least. Page 291. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elokei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומשיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מחלקים בחיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופאי חולים ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה המתים. Page 293. נקדש שמך בעולם נקדש שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך לארץ כבודו לעומתם ברוך יאמרו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור ימלוך אדוני לעולם ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. Try and join me. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. בשבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. ברוך אתה אדוני, ברוך הוא וברוך שמו, האל, האל, הקדוש, amen. We continue now with the remainder of the Amidah individually, pages 293 through the completion of the Amidah. If you're continuing to complete the Amidah, please feel free to continue to do so individually. At the bottom of page 299, the final two lines, we have Oseh Shalom B'Romav, that God who makes peace in the heavens above should make peace between us and all of Israel. And we can say usually to that, Amen, hopefully always to that. Normally, as like L'Dor Vador, I would not include this in a song version like this for a Mincha afternoon service like we're doing, but just also in the spirit of bringing in just a little bit of a feeling, just a little bit, b'miktzat, a little tiny bit of a feeling of Shabbat into the weekday now. Let's make this a little bit special by indeed singing Oseh Shalom together. So if some of you do know the harmonies for this or any harmonies, feel free to add in and join in with that. We're on then page 299 at the bottom, Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Thank you so much for the harmony on that. Appreciate it very, very much. We continue now on page 300 with the Reader's Kaddish for the Kaddish Shalem. יתקדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וביונכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתמם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילא מן כל ביחתה ושכתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן ועלמא ואמרו אמן. תתקבל לצבאותיכם ובעדכם תכל ישראל, קדם אבון דבשמיא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיא, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. And we continue now as we ask you please to rise on page 301 for the Aleinu prayer. And as is customary here, we will do the first two paragraphs and then the third silently until we come in with the conclusion together. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, ודעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד, אין עוד. על כן כי המלכות שלך היא ולמעט ימלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. Please be seated. Those who are reciting Kaddish, either by virtue of observing a yortzeit or because you are reciting Kaddish following the passing of a dear one during this last year, on page 302, we'll invite you to rise now and join me for the sacred and hallowed words of the mourner's Kaddish. And sometimes I will mention there are people who say them who don't meet those first two criteria, but some who choose to say the Kaddish in memory of the 6 million. Some of the 6 million who passed away, sometimes we really don't know the exact day on which many passed away, but we can affirm and know that indeed, on every day, there were so many who were lost. Page 302, as is the custom that I usually share with congregations, I'd like to slow this way down so that everyone will have the opportunity to be able to pronounce and say these words. And it's nice that in this Siddur, there is also the transliteration on the bottom left-hand side of page 302. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו amen. May God grant comfort to all of us who mourn. And may the memory of those for whom we mourn remain among us as a loving, living, and inspiring benediction. And we can all say, Amen. I was asked to share a few words of Torah here with you, and the idea came up, well, maybe I would talk on last week's Torah portion or the week before that. And they're beautiful Torah portions. I mean, I can't help but mention, Bahar, the portion Bahar, Ikratrem Torah b'chol ha'aretz, l'chol yoshveya. Not too far from here, there's that city called Philadelphia, where they have the Liberty Bell, on which that particular verse is inscribed. They shall proclaim liberty throughout the land to all the inhabitants thereof. And that's the concept of the Jubilee. But God willing, we'll save that for another time. But it's a tremendous idea and a tremendous heritage. And in the concept here of not just looking back, but also moving forward, I thought that what I would do is take the liberty to share with you some thoughts regarding the Haftarah that would be chanted, that will be chanted traditionally on this Shabbat. It's from Hosea, the prophet Hosea. And if any of you do have the Eitz Chaim there handy, It would be found on page 787. And I prepared a few handouts that maybe some of you received already, but I just Xeroxed it from the Eitz Chaim there. So, and I'm really just going to be quoting a few portions of this text anyway, so even if you don't have the book, it's not necessarily too crucial. You will hear my comments on it. Each prophet, has their own style, their own flavor, their own feeling. And Hosea is certainly no exception to that. You think of Isaiah, you think of the stern majesty, his precise and extremely literate use of nuances of the Hebrew language on such a sublime and immense level. And the moral condemnations of Isaiah to the Jewish people when they strayed is terrifying in itself, just to hear and feel the words. And then you have Jeremiah, steadfast faith. Imagine, the second temple has been destroyed. It's gone. It's in smithereens. People have been massacred. They have been taken captive. There has been immense, incalculable loss. And yet, Jeremiah, amongst those taken to Babylon, decides and feels deep in his heart that the Jewish people will in fact return to the land of Israel. So what does he do? It takes great courage, as you know, to buy in a falling market, whether it be stocks or real estate, whatever. Think of the real estate market for Jews in Jerusalem in the year 586 of the Common Era, before the Common Era, right? The temple has been demolished. People are taken in captivity. What is he doing? He's buying real estate, and he's in jail. He's imprisoned in Babylon there. He has a relative write out a deed of trust, the equivalent of a deed of trust, with 70 shekels of silver that he's going to put somehow on deposit. And this is his affirmation that indeed there will be a replenishing of the land of Israel. So that's Jeremiah's steadfast faith, unaltering faith. But then we come to Hosea. And Hosea here, we can think really of love. Love that is in so many ways very, very human, very palpable, very real, but at the same time, mirroring a divine love. As a matter of fact, Hosea himself felt that the metaphors of his own life were exemplary of the metaphors and relationships between God and the Jewish people. And that's what gives Hosea's writing here such power and such immense glory in its own right. Hosea had a wife. Her name was Gomer, and she strayed and committed infidelity with other men and was engaged in idolatries and harlotries and just really things that were devastating to Hosea the man because he loved her so much. And there are three themes that I think we can take from this portion, and I'll introduce them, then discuss them just a little bit more in depth. The first is that we can be, and indeed are, loved, certainly by God and hopefully from human beings as well, when and as we are in fact imperfect. In other words, we don't have to be perfect to be loved, and certainly not by God. The second idea is that renewed hope and faith can be regenerated from immense loss and destruction. No matter how deep the loss, it's not impossible for faith and hope to regenerate themselves. And then the third concept here is that this new and renewed love can, in fact, by virtue of the experiences that collectively have been shared, can become deeper and stronger than it was before. And that is certainly inspiring, I would suggest. So, when Hosea's wife, Gomer, strayed. He was heartbroken. But he had a strong faith akin to Jeremiah itself, that his wife, who he loved, that love would continue, just as he envisioned the love of God for the Jewish people, no matter our own straying, would continue. But he went through a lot of pain. And there was a point where he even emphasized that the number of the Jewish people should be like the sands of the sea. And that instead of the former rejection and the former pain of having the image of that you are not my people, there would be an image of the Jewish people, a proclamation that the Jewish people would again become the children of the living God. Yes, there would be a rebuke of his wife, of Gomer, but there would be a new renewal at the same time. The times of her desertion would be remembered when she went after her in symbolic and poetic languages, when she would go after her lovers who supplied with bread and water, wool and linen, my oil and my drink. But then she would come to say and realize that the love of Hosea, her husband, was primary. It could not be duplicated by the ephemeral loves that she shared with other people. And so he believed and proclaimed that she would say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then I fared better than now. And at that time, she would remember the previous examples of love and giving that he shared with her. But then we also come to the point and the idea that no matter how deep the loss, that hope and faith could be regenerated and rekindled. First, you had to deal with the reality of the tremendous pain that Hosea felt in his own personal life, which again, he analogized to the pain that God felt, the sadness that God felt for the straying of us, the Jewish people. And so first, the errors of her ways had to be recognized, right? So in verse 12 on page 789, he says, now will I uncover her shame in the very sight of her lovers, and none shall save her from me. And there's a degree of punishment involved, sort of pushing away for a time. I will lay waste her vines and her fig trees, which he thinks are a fee she received from her lovers. And I will turn them into brushwood, and the beasts of the field shall devour them. Not a happy image. Not a fun image. And several verses of punishment continue. But then you have the renewal. You have the new hope, the new courtship, the renewed love. Listen how beautiful it sounds. Assuredly, I will speak coaxingly to her and lead her through the wilderness and speak to her tenderly. I will give her vineyards, and she shall respond as in the days of her youth, when she came up from the land of Egypt. So what a beautiful memory. The past memories of love are now being rekindled in a newer, in a stronger, and a more dynamic way. And this new hope is going to give regeneration for his love for his wife Gomer. And again, by analogy of God's love for the Jewish people. But then, through that difficulty, through that experience of loss and then coming back together and then rekindling, the love can become stronger than ever before. The bond can be recreated in a new and dynamic way. And what is the language that Hosea uses to demonstrate that? It's found on page 790. In that day, he prophesies, declares the Lord, you will call me Ishi. Now, Ish means man, but Ishi is my man. But it's said here in an intimate, close relationship. And no more will you call me Baali. Now, Baali could also be my husband, my master. But the term Baal is also reminiscent of the former idolatries, because Baal was one of the foreign idols that and foreign gods that were worshipped in other practices. So that name will actually be erased. It won't even be used. The word itself will no longer even be used. And instead, you're going to have this new, rich, covenantal relationship. And that's what we have in the next verse, in verse 20. There's going to be a new agreement, a renewed covenant, a brit. And by the way, think of the times that brit is used, covenant is used in the Tanakh, in the Bible, in the book of Genesis. It's always at very significant moments. After the flood, when God renewed the covenant with Noah never to destroy the land again, that was a brit. And then with Abraham, it was a brit. And now we have a new covenantal relationship. In that day, I will make a covenant for them. And notice he uses the animals themselves to be witnesses. With the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the creeping things of the ground. I will now. That would be enough. You could say like Pesach, Dayenu. That would be enough. But what else does he do? It's incredible. The nature of the universe will be transformed because of this new and renewed love. He says, I will also banish bow, sword, and war from the land. Thus I will let them lie down in safety. Imagine a land of Israel without war. And that's what he's promising. And that's how optimistic it can be. But then it goes even higher, to a higher spiritual level, with some verses that I'm going to quote first in Hebrew, which were incorporated, have been incorporated by the rabbis into the daily liturgy, and you'll see why. Because they are so uplifting when you understand them in this context. It's verse 21, for those of you who have the text, page 790. Ve'arastich le'olam, ve'arastich li b'tzedek, u'v'mishpat, u'v'chesed u'v'rachamim, ve'arastich li be'emunah, ve'adat et Adonai. Allow me to give the translation and then to delve into it in a little bit more of nuance. So I will espouse you forever. So when the tefillin are put on, this is said, the tefillin are wrapped. This is said to, again, emphasize this covenantal, this close bond and relationship between ourselves and God. But it's a language also of marriage, all right? So I will espouse you forever. I will espouse you. But with what qualities? But tzedek, which is really righteousness, justice, uv'mishpat, uv'chesed, and grace, uv'rahamim, and with compassion. With compassion. He loves his Gomer so much. Everything we read about the punishments, she lived through them, she recognized them, but then guess what? They're as if they were vanished in his present mind and consciousness, his present state. He's only overwhelmed now with his love for Gomer as he envisions God to be overwhelmed, as it were, with his and for his love for the Jewish people. And so the final verse here, so touching and so profound and so strong at the same time. Ve'arstichli be'emunah, and I will be bound to you in emunah, in deep belief. And then culminating, ve'adat et Adonai. Now, the verb lada'at here, to know. This is an intimate knowing. And also this verb has many rich connotations earlier in Tanakh. When for example, some of the patriarchs conceived with their wives, and this word yada is known. So it's very, very special. At this level, there will be this renewed partnership and this deep understanding of the presence of God, of God's Spirit in our lives. What could be more uplifting? To come out from tragedy to renewed strength, vigor, and hope. And it's all within the focus and paradigm of love that we learn and embrace so much from Hosea. May these words and these thoughts truly be inspirations for all of us. And in the final word there, the word amen comes from the root emunah. meaning belief. So we can say, hopefully, Amen. Thank you. So I want to thank you so much. At this point, I'll turn this over. Let me turn it over to our congregation president to give us the stage directions.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was very enjoyable. I was sitting here from the back, and everybody saw him reading. So I just want to let you know, he wasn't reading anything. He was reading the same handouts that we all had. So he didn't make he made it all up himself. He ad-libbed it. He ad-libbed very good, very very well, better than I could do. So thank you very much, Rabbi. It was very interesting and very educational. Right after here, this sort of ends our formal program for tonight. We're all going to adjourn into the social hall so you can get up close and personal to the rabbi and have a little interaction with him. We have dessert, which has been provided for by Elaine and Steve, of course. And we thank you very much for taking care of that tonight. And so the rest of the evening's up to everybody to socialize and get more acquainted with Rabbi David Barnett. Thank you very much.